Well, good evening, everyone, those of us who are here. And good evening to anyone who's joining us by Zoom. We're glad to be back together again. Before we begin our work, we need roll call. I read recently that roll call is a unique manner in which to take attendance. It is a way to honor the members from the group who are present. Robin, may we honor each of the members of our Historic Preservation Commission at this time with roll call.
Yes, Madam Chair. The Honorable Commissioner Hensick. Our Madam Chair.
Present.
Commissioner Slaughter is not present. Commissioner Hammond.
Honored to be present.
Commissioner Roughton is not with us this evening, as is our Vice Chair, but Commissioner Rubis.
Present.
Alternate Quarternick is absent. Our Commission Liaison Broyles.
Yes, I'm here.
She's on Zoom, but we can't hear her.
Ms. Broyles, we can't hear you.
Oh, okay. How about now? Can you hear me?
No.
Okay, well, she is present.
Yes.
Council Liaison Nyon. Here. Council Liaison Rambo.
Here.
And our student Route 66 Task Force Liaison, Nolan Myers, is not with us this evening because it is his birthday and his mom's birthday. So it's a double occasion. Oh, but we do have quorum.
Thank you very much. This time of the year certainly brings to mind the red, white, and blue and historic preservation, with July 4th being right behind us. Many historic events were highlighted in various areas around our beautiful country. As one thinks about some of the original communities, which proudly have one of our community historic markers, can't you just visualize the patriotic picnics going on there in the various groves? Perhaps you too celebrated our country's founding during the 4th of July weekend. Well, let us now stand as we have Tracy lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, everyone has received a copy of the minutes from our June meeting. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to them at this time? We're hearing none. We will approve them by general consent. Do we have public comment this evening, Robin?
I do not see any attendees at this time online, and I do not have comment cards from those in our audience. Is there anyone who would like to offer us public comment? No public comment.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So moving on to old business, the first thing we have is the student liaison update and comments. So Robin, that will be you for tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that is me this evening. As noted, Nolan is absent due to, I think, a justifiable reason. However, he has promised that he will be here in August, and that will be his last meeting with this commission. So we might consider doing something a little ceremonial for him at that time. And that's all I have.
Did we hear anything about his competitions this summer?
Ultimately, I think Cost decided that he would not go on to national. So he stayed home this time. But I think he plans to go in the future.
Well, very good. We're proud of his accomplishments. Changes to the HPC composition. Is that Robin as well?
Yes, we are ready to discuss this again. We have since consulted, obviously with you at our last meeting regarding proposed changes to the HPC composition. And then we've also taken your suggestions back and worked with them with our city attorney as well. And tonight we have a final draft for your review. And if you choose action this evening, to give you some highlights as to some of the changes from last time. You might notice that we did raise the age to be 13 years. So we're targeting that high school age range now for our youth members. And then the other noticeable change was that upon the advice of our city attorney, we are going ahead with a mayoral appointment for our youth members with the recommendation of this Historic Preservation Commission through that application process that would be administered by our department. Additionally, we are still recommending that we extend the vote to our commission liaisons. However, our city attorney noted that there was a little bit of a discrepancy with the city charter on how we currently have those liaisons appointed. So we are going to address that issue as well as extend the vote to them with this update if this commission chooses to recommend it. And then finally, for our advisor position, obviously this was the most discussed, I think, element of our recommendations last time. So upon the advice of our city attorney, we're actually backing away from the term emeritus advisor, which was singling out specifically former commissioners that had reached certain term limits. And instead, we're moving away from like a formal position on the HPC and extending the authority to this commission to designate an advisor to serve at its pleasure. And this advisor could be a former commissioner. It could be someone, a member of the Wildwood Historical Society. It could be someone else with a certain amount of expertise and knowledge and qualifications that would add to the activities of this commission. So really it broadens that definition, gives us a little bit more flexibility. And if we did want to define a certain time frame that they might serve, we could do so in the bylaws. But it's not suggested or recommended that we do it here.
Yes, Jim.
I think given the language and given that we're not considering them a formal position on this commission, I would have to consult with the city attorney to be absolutely positive. So, but my impression is no, not necessarily. I will confirm that with our city attorney and get back to this commission. I don't want to say for sure this evening because I don't know. I'm not confident in that answer.
To single or could it choose multiple over time? The way it reads to me, it doesn't appear to have a limitation.
I believe that would be more of a discussion at the commission level as we craft the bylaws.
Make sure you've turned on your microphones this evening, please.
Yes, please do. We have been having some issues as I go back over the minutes. I've noticed that certain commissioners in particular almost never get heard. So please do check your microphones.
Pull it towards you a little bit too.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, with your permission. Members of the commission, I think it's important to look at the advisor petition, the advisor position from the perspective of where we started. It was a recognition of service on the part of a commission member that had shown just exemplary knowledge, skills, and abilities. So in response to Mr. Rubus's question, I think the advisor position should be a resident. If you all need assistance, and that typically means you need it, we'll need it, we can go out and get any kind of consultant that we need. For example, Pattern and Knives. We've gone to them twice now, first for that reconstruction study, and then now for the plan set and bid specifications. So I'd like to think that the advisor position is a recognition of service, not just because we need an opinion from an expert. We can get those through our consulting programs. Thank you.
So it's a difference between advisor and consultant. Okay. Okay.
Anyone else?
So if I may,
Yes.
just to conclude, some next steps, if the commission decides to proceed with an action this evening, and by all means, you've had one day to look at it. But we have been discussing this for a while, so it's completely up to you. But this recommendation would be presented to city council during its work session. And then from there, depending on the outcome of that discussion, it would then be drafted into legislation to go before city council for review and action upon it. After, if it were to be adopted by the city council, then we'll come back to you and we'll have these commission level discussions about how we should define these new elements to the HBC composition within the bylaws.
So we're looking for a motion to accept this to take on to the council. Work session.
That is
Proceed.
correct.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that a motion.
Jim makes the motion and Chris seconds
I will
it.
second.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? It has passed.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on now to the history book update. It's exciting.
All right, this is a bit of an involved presentation, so I must first load up my slides. Okay, Madam Chair, members of the commission, you have a memorandum from the department in front of you this evening about the Wildwood History Book and the pricing discussion that we first had as part of the Book Launch Planning Commission or Committee meeting held on June 23rd of last month, and now this evening. In that memorandum, quite a bit of information is thrown at you, and I'm going to go over that this evening. But we've also been doing some additional number crunching, and there's some new information that's come to light that we should also discuss with you as well. So I do have a presentation. Oh, why did that get put there? Okay. Oh, okay. Yes, because I decided in my wisdom to at the last minute change the order because I felt it made more sense to go there. All right. So as discussed, we do have some additional information to present to you this evening. And I guess I'm just going to start it off with, I've done some investigation into author copies of the Wildwood History Book. It appears that as the author of said book, the city of Wildwood is entitled to order as many copies as we like, up to 999 copies per order, but unlimited orders for the book at its print cost plus any shipping and taxes. So that means we can get these books for, relatively cheaply and then sell them at the listing price directly. They can be used for donated copies and they can be sold. We are entitled to sell them. And so this shifts the conversation very much because there's quite a difference between the number we get for an estimated royalty, which is a direct sale off of the Amazon website, and what we would get if we first ordered the book and then sold it directly locally. So that is going to be part of our discussion this evening. It should be noted that author copies do have a bit of a lag time, so we do have to order them well in advance. They suggest at least a month buffer. I think typically people get them a little over 2 weeks, but to be safe, you want to order them a month in advance, particularly for an event like Celebrate Wildwood, where we're going to launch our book. So that's just something to note. Okay, so at our book launch planning committee, we did come to some recommended prices for listing the book. And since then, we've done some additional research and have, perhaps a slightly tweaked recommendation to offer you. However, I'm not sure it's quite as relevant as it was before, given some of the new information. But first, I would just note some of the highlights of recommendations that Debbie Ward presented to us of Silver Tablet Marketing at our book launch planning committee. And that is, one, book prices can always be reduced, but they cannot be increased. So it's something to think about as we discuss the listing price of the book. We can always go down. We can't go back up once we've gone down. Psychologically, more people will buy the book if the price ends in an odd number, particularly a 7 or a 9. So it's just something to think about. And if the intent is to encourage customers to buy the hardcover version of the book, it's better for the paperback book to be closer to it in pricing psychologically. They'll just go that extra mile and get the hardcover at that point. So given this discussion, at the end of our committee meeting, we had the recommendation from our committee members that the ebook be priced at $9.99, the paperback at $37, and the hardcover at $57. However, then we did some research. And what we found is that the estimated royalty for a book priced at $37 for the paperback would be $9.78, compared to the estimated royalty for hardcover, which would be $6.79. So psychologically, we're pushing people to purchase the hardcover, but we actually get less money in royalties. Now, again, this discussion has shifted a little bit because we actually get quite a bit more for the hardcover if we sell it directly than what we would get for the paperback. So let's add that to this discussion as well. The estimated profit for the paperback, and I am really playing with these numbers because I don't have access right now for the shipping costs associated with ordering it, for ordering the author copies. All I know is that online they say the shipping costs are higher because Amazon's not exactly profiting from the book sale at that point, and that's part of the lag time as well. They won't let you use Prime. We do have a Prime account, but they won't let you use Prime for author copies. So my estimated profit, and this is real fuzzy, for a paperback if sold directly would be around $15, which would give us room to offer discounts or do other types of things with it also at the local level to encourage people to buy it from us directly.
Have to do sales tax to sell these books at like Celebrate Wildwood, does the city collect sales tax on anything else? Yeah, so there would be, that'd be factored. Is that factored into this $15 right now?
I mean, as I said, the $15 is a very fuzzy estimate and it's very conservative, assuming a whole bunch of factors. Yes. And then for hardcover, we're looking at maybe $20 per book. And this is based on, selling it at that $59, which is what we were recommending based on the royalties. But again, I don't know where this discussion might take us based on this new information. So paperback 15, hardcover 20. If they go to the website, we'd make slightly more on the royalties for the paperback and slightly less on the hardcover. So at the time I wrote the memorandum, the department was recommending that we sell the ebook for $9.99 as recommended by committee members. The paperback for $35, so a little bit more affordable for those who would prefer that price range. And then the hardcover for $59, so a little bit more, like a couple dollars more than what was discussed. And our reasoning for that was that it evened out the royalties a little bit more so that we were getting something that was fairly equal for both. Of course, you know, if we decide as a commission that we're going to, you know, very heavily promote buying from the city directly, that might throw this conversation into a completely different place. But I think generally we do agree with the pricing scheme as suggested. So to give you an idea of what we would be making off of this book, I threw together a chart, and let's say we sold 500 books. If we sold them on Amazon, and this is based on the hardcover royalty, we would get around $4,000. If we sold them directly, again, hardcover by the city, we would make $10,000. If it was paperback, we'd make $7,500. So there's quite a difference in, you know, what we recoup in terms of, you know, book investment, and then what we can put forth to future preservation activities if we try to sell the book and as physical copies versus trying to encourage people to buy them off of Amazon. So I don't know if you want to take a look at that chart for just a minute. I know it's new information. Good. All right. Just so you know how we're doing in terms of donated copies, right now we're resting at about 100 donated copies. And that's, you know, copies to city council members, to commission members, to institutions in the area, schools, libraries, people who have helped write us testimonials for the book. You know, it all adds up. So we're looking at 100 copies that we would buy, and, you know, the nicer version is hardcover. So if we're going to donate them, we probably want to do a hardcover, and we're looking at $3,000 for that. Currently, I have about 78 copies. You know, if you count everybody on my book notification list and what they've requested in terms of quantities, you know, we've got about 78 copies of people who definitely want to buy the book. And so that gets us about halfway of that $3,000 already. So that's just so you have an idea of what these book donations mean. I thought I would share, just as something fun, some of the book testimonials we've received to date. The first one is more from the professional side of things. It's from Rena Shergan, who's an archivist of the Archdiocese of St. Louis. She says, "Celebrate the history of Wildwood, Missouri is a wonderfully engaging look at the heritage of a place from prehistoric times to present. It situates Wildwood in the national and international historical context, and then drills down to the captivating stories of the specific people, organizations, and sites that have shaped the history of this special place. Packed with colorful illustrations and images, the book is easy to read from cover to cover, or browse through sections of particular interest. You will not regret picking up this fascinating read." So I would say that's
Couldn't have said it, but
I would say that's pretty high praise. This is more from the local angle. We've got Mr. Charlie St. Ange, who says, "It is evident that much time and devotion was given to the development of this book. The references and cross-references were excellent. So many of these folks I remember stories about. Many were family members. Truly a job well done, and it is much appreciated by those who are interested in the history of Wildwood." And then finally, short and sweet. "I read through Celebrate History of Wildwood. I love how you went from the local to the global to understand the region from a historical perspective." So I think Ms. Von Gruben found that very validating, given that was her vision for the book, was to place everything locally into that national and global context. So that's what I have right now for book testimonials. And now I will turn it back to our book pricing discussion And I think I will just take us back to that recommended pricing scheme as we have it. So Joe and I, of course, are available to answer your questions. But at this time, we are looking for direction and an action from this commission this evening on a pricing scheme for this book. And I think you all agree that we probably do want to sell it directly based on those numbers. Thank you.
Hey, Chris.
Thank you for taking the time to present that to us. Was there any discussion on the book launch committee? And granted, the author pricing is new and was post that committee, but was there any discussion around having it at a discounted price, selling it at the event? So, I mean, just realizing we would like to try to bring the money back to cover our donations, and then potentially raise funds for future projects. I lean towards, would it make sense to sell it for $37 or $47 in person as a launch special? And then going forward, any extras we have, we could increase that price or keep the same price if you buy it directly from the city, but then still have the $59 and the $35 as the online retail price. Was there any discussion along those lines? I feel like your opportunity is there, right? That's the opportunity to really churn through some books and book sales and then future events too. It's not like it's a one and done event. Next year we can sell them again. But that to me is kind of the biggest opportunity. So sorry. So back to the original question, which is, was there discussion of having a discounted price at the event?
So yes, there was. And there's really two different perspectives on it. One is, could the discounted price generate more sales? Or is this our prime opportunity to get full cost for the book because it's a special edition copy? It's signed by the author. And I think the Wildwood Historical Society even agreed to offer like a free tour of their museum and some other incentives. I think maybe even a percentage off membership, if I remember correctly, to encourage people to buy the book. I also think that one thing we really have as a selling point with this book, I'm going to say it again, I've been saying it all week, is that we can tell them that they're not just purchasing a book when they buy the Wildwood history book. They're actually putting quite a deal of money back into preservation activities for the community. So they're getting a lot of bang for their buck, really, when it comes down to it. And I had a woman, granted, she was from the Wildwood Historical Society, so obviously an interest, but she came in this week. She had a whole list of names for me. And she didn't even want to think about the paperback version of the book. She was like, no, we want the hardcover version. And she didn't blink an eye when I said it was $59 or that we were considering, that ballpark of a price. She was like, yeah, we are expecting to pay around that for that. So, so that's what I would just offer to you in response to your question, as far as what that discussion was. So yes, we did consider it, and I think our thought was maybe we could offer other things to make it special.
Okay, and just, this is kind of the first time I'm thinking about this. So back to the rest of the commission, I'm not saying we have to offer a discounted price. I was just asking, does it make sense? And I would lean towards no at this point, based on yours. So that's my feedback.
Anyone else for comment or question?
So
Jim?
I'm just a little confused about direct, and is it still going to be available through Amazon?
Yes, it will still be available via Amazon. We would just promote it heavily to buy directly from us.
Okay, so we actually get the physical books here.
We would have to order the author copies ahead of time and have them available, or accept orders from people and then order the copies, and they would have a delay in receiving them. So given, the convenience and, people who want the book now, it's probably best that we try to, periodically order them ahead of time so we have copies in our reserves.
We have at Celebrate Wildwood, and big sale and everything.
Yes.
And then people see other people's books and now they, oh, I want one of those. Do they come to City Hall to buy the book, or how do we do that?
They would probably just go to our website, to the webpage for the book. We'll have a QR code on everything, on the bookmarks with the book, and from the website, we would have an order form maybe.
Okay, so then where will the book be sourced from?
But well, the book would originally come from KDP or Amazon. We
No, I
would,
think- Sorry, the question then becomes if we're encouraged, so
sure.
for Celebrate Wildwood, let's say, and I'm going to throw out a number, but I'm going to ask you a question about your proposal for a number in a minute. I'm going to say we order 200,
Mhm.
100 of those are going to the donation, the guest list, whatever. And then we sell 100 at Celebrate Wildwood. At that point in time, we're done. We're done. We can't sell anymore and deliver them at the event. We could pre-sell them at the same price and say, hey, in a month, we will have additional books and you can come pick them up. I think where Mr. Rubis is asking is, say we order 300, we sell 250, we got 50 left. Are we encouraging people to go to the website and pay and then come to City Hall to pick them up? Or are we encouraging people to just go to Amazon and deal with it and get them from Amazon?
I think they would have multiple options. They
Yeah.
could come to City Hall, purchase it from us directly. I mean, we would have to work this out. So I'm
Yeah,
kind of
it's
speaking off the cuff. This is theoretic, hypothetical at this point. We would need to have those discussions internally
So
about what makes sense.
it would be to our advantage to order as many author copies as we can to sell them at a point of sale in Wildwood. Correct?
It would be, I'm guessing there's going to be a significant price break in shipping costs depending on the quantity we order. That's kind of how it worked out with even the points of interest map. That's why we went with a $2,000 or 2,000 quantity order instead of what we were originally thinking, which was lower than that. So my understanding is the shipping cost does go down per book based on how many copies you order. So it might depend, on that, where those price breaks happen.
It also depends on. So. Has there been any thought or estimation into how many do we think we could sell at the event? How many do we know? Do we know how many we gave away of previous years? I'm sorry. Exactly. Well, we gave them away.
We gave them away.
Yeah. So the question, and we've done it. We did some at one point. There was a year where we did donations towards the Essen Log Cabin.
Oh,
Yeah.
When that was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years
Yeah.
ago, somewhere. There were some in the past that have been given away for free. Maybe the last edition might not have been. But
We
So,
didn't
so,
have one.
but back to the point, if we can estimate how many we think we need, we think we're gonna need to order 400 or 500. One, there's a big upfront cost there, right? If you're thinking $30 a book at 500 of them, there's a big number there that you're bringing in. And additional potentially shipping costs associated with that as well. Then you've got to store them and you've got to then turn them over or retail them and hope that you sell those at the event. Because what you don't want to do is sell 50 at the event and you've got 400 sitting on a shelf somewhere taking up space that we maybe now need to sell. That being said, hopefully we'll sell them eventually. We just don't know what it's going to be.
well, again, I would like to see the cost. I would like to see the shipping costs and see kind of where those shipping cost breaks are before I would propose a number. But my thought in response to that is, I think, we would want to order a reasonable quantity for what we might expect at Celebrate Wildwood in terms of those book orders. I am going to be promoting pre-orders pretty heavily in the upcoming months, like once we get a handle on book pricing and we can publish and all of that. So we might have we'll have an idea of who's committed to the book ahead of time. I don't know if we'll have it in enough time for us to make a decision for the order itself, actually, because it's going to have to be a month ahead of time. But we know who's on our book notification list. And I think if all else fails, we might, even maybe be able to work out a deal with Wildwood Historical Society about selling the book, there or in other locations, the Missouri History Museum, if we have all these copies on hand. So I think there's some ways around it. And I also, I agree that we probably don't want to order so many that there's a chance of us having a storage issue.
And really, maybe the bigger concern, maybe, do we have the budget and funds allocated to say, hey, let's go spend 15 grand on books before Celebrate Wildwood? That if you sell them, you get all that money back plus the additional or the royalty. But if you, I guess, I don't know how the budgeting works to be able to say, do you have the ability to spend that? And that's just $30 a book at $500. Do you have the ability to spend that on an order beforehand?
Well, from the perspective of the department, we set our budget back at on January 1st, 2023. So the knowledge of the book being published obviously was there, but we didn't know of this opportunity relative to author copies. That amount of expenditure, 500 books at $30 a book, 500 books at $30 a book, that's $15,000. That has to go through city council.
Well, so I think what it brings it down to is the importance of the pre-launch publicity to get people excited or at least aware of the book.
We will just this week, we've been putting together our Gazette article for the book, and we're going to have a really nice feature in the Gazette right before Celebrate Wildwood about the Wildwood history book, some of the story around it. It's a Q&A with Ms. Von Gruben, and she talks about kind of the story of the book, how it happened, some of the COVID related challenges. And I mean, I think she did a really nice job of putting that together to where there's really kind of a human interest element to it. She talks about some of the emotional, some of the emotions she had writing the book. And I just think it's a lot for people to be excited about. And we'll have some of the testimonials in there as well.
And I think as we get a little closer to the actual Celebrate Wildwood, I think if we could get the West Magazine and the Eureka Leader to, put a blurb in there to get people. I mean, I find myself reading the Leader too and the West Magazine. So
what we might consider too, we've talked about, potentially reaching out to realtors is maybe having a certain discount if they buy a certain number of, copies of the book at a time. Or same with the school district or just anybody who might want, to have copies on hand for themselves, for their customers, et cetera. So that's something to do. I mean, I will say that we have a lot of, I think we have a lot of contacts and a lot of interesting ways to promote, with the Wildwood Points of Interest map, for example. In past versions of that map, we've ordered, a decent quantity of it. We've given it away at Celebrate Wildwood. And then we have a huge box of points of interest maps that just, rest, I guess, at City Hall. I think recently we may have gone through and eliminated some of it. But with the recent updated version, the foldable travel map, we took them to Route 66 State Park. We took them to Babbler. We took them to the Wildwood Hotel. We like really pushed it in our new resident packets, which I think we would also have promotions for the Wildwood history book. So I think that, however many copies we had left over, there'd be opportunities to get them out.
Anyone else? Rob?
Yeah, just real quickly. The donated copies. Personally, I'll buy my own darn book. And I think a lot of the council members would feel the same way. And we should have a provision for that, or just skinny back on the number of donated copies, because I don't need. Tracy and I get so much kickback money from all kinds of the sleazy. We hear about it constantly, and I still haven't seen it. I haven't seen a dime of it, but potentially someday. No, seriously though, I think if the goal is to make a few bucks for the city, everyone understands that, and I don't know that we need to donate 100 copies, but I was going to suggest, whether we do or whether we don't, that we acquire a certain number of books, sell them at Wildwood. If we have a bunch left over, that's the time to donate them. If we don't have any left over, we place an order, in a couple weeks later, we're passing out our donated copies. So it's a way to keep from getting stuck with a whole bunch of extra books if we're concerned about, buying them all at once or something like that. It's just a suggestion. But I think the pricing here seems reasonable. I agree with both Jim and Chris that we want to maximize the profit, and so that will come by advertising in as many forums as we can on our city website. We can say the book is out and those kinds of things. And I really think that people will show up at Celebrate Wildwood looking to buy a book if we do that right. So, and the price seems reasonable. So that's all I have.
Tracy?
Yeah, and I know this is, you haven't worked through all this part yet, but I would like to see getting a book made as easy as possible. QR codes are great. There's a lot of people that don't know what a QR code is, much less how to use one. And I think some of the purchasers of this book might be some of those people. So I would even like to see, like in the Gazette or wherever we're advertising it, and maybe this is not possible, but that they just be able to stop by City Hall and go pick up a book. They don't have to fill anything out. They don't have to use a QR code. They don't have to do, I just think the easier it is for them to gain access to them after, a public event, that it will do better if we just have some on hand that somebody wandering through can just purchase.
I think that's something, we would need to discuss internally, but I think it's possible. So it's just a matter of figuring out what those logistics would be.
Do we have a ballpark figure as to what we have spent in all the books that we've given away over the years of the, chapters as they're added, to know what we would hope to be able to get back from sales to cover?
Madam Chair, I think I've told the book launch committee that, for the most part, we'd have to sell a whole lot of books to recoup what we've done. Obviously, we paid Ms. Von Gruben fees for her services and authoring a number of the chapters. Generally speaking, we spend anywhere from about $8,000 to $10,000 in publishing the sections of the book, those years that we did it for Celebrate Wildwood. So if it was just 4 years at the highest price, that's $40,000 plus what we paid Ms. Von Gruben. So we're in that range of probably $60,000 or $65,000, if not a little more.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? A lot to think about.
So at this point, you're looking for a motion from us to move forward with that recommended pricing or adjusted pricing if we so choose. Is that what you're looking for today? So that you can plan and move forward?
That is correct. I mean, not to add another wrench, but we moved the paperback pricing back a little bit, thinking that we would, be more encouraging people to buy from Amazon versus direct from us. If our goal is to get, more profit and have more people purchasing the hardcover, then we might consider moving the paperback back to that 37 number. But if we do think, ordering direct isn't going to happen, then we might stick with the 35. So it's just, I guess I would just, do these numbers make sense to you? Which way are you leaning in terms of how we go ahead and sell the book? I mean, obviously, we would make a whole lot more if we did sell it directly, but then there is always that risk that we're going to have, copies that don't get sold. Yeah, the shipping prices, I cannot give you a number on that yet, but I will be checking at what those price breaks are and what makes sense.
Yeah, so my thoughts on pricing is I'm okay with 59 for the hardcover. I mean, I'd push 37 or 40 for the paperback if you want to increase that a bit. I think you probably should order some paperbacks, with the majority of the order being hardcover. The downside to ordering additional or too many books is you then have them in stock and you got to sell them, right? Or you got to do something to try to sell them. The upside is they're significantly cheaper from a cost perspective, and you've got more room to discount them if you need to clear them out and make them available. And having them in stock, I think, to me, is the biggest draw. I don't think you're going to find a lot of people that will go to Amazon to buy this book if they can get it in person in Wildwood. So I think even if we order too many, I think there's opportunity to recoup those costs and still bring in additional funds for the commission's programs going forward.
Right. I mean, just to add on to that, if I may, even with the new resident packets, and I've said this before, as parents who moved around a bit when I was young, one of the first things we would do in order to build identity with a place is, kind of focus on its history and, things that would give us a sense of where we had just moved to. So I think the new resident packets are an opportunity to as a new resident, you get a certain percentage off of the Wildwood history book. And, so I think there's ways to push copies out the door down the line. Then at that point, it makes sense, I think, to offer discounts and get them going. But yeah, I do think that there's a lot of creative ways we can take to get copies, out of storage if we need, even if it's, again, there's places we can approach locally that might be willing to sell the book, things of that nature as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a question regarding the recommended price of the 3 versions. If we sell them from City Hall or at the event, do you want to include as part of that $35, $59, the shipping and taxes? So the decrease in the profit, there is a decrease in profit, or do we just sell them at that amount and just add those 2 on, so to speak?
My opinion, I don't think you can, or I don't think you should add the shipping onto that. If you add the tax onto it, okay. Or if you roll the tax into it, I guess I haven't done the math to figure out what the difference in tax is going to be. So what was the author cost was $27.41? Was that something like that
For the
hardcover? So,
and that's not the author cost, that's just the printing cost. And then that's not accounting for shipping and taxes that we would pay.
And again, I'm not sure how Amazon will handle this, but we pay no taxes in the state of Missouri. I'm assuming they'll honor that tax certificate that basically says the government doesn't pay, but we'll find out.
yeah, so we would essentially pay whatever that author cost is plus
The
known
shipping.
shipping at
Yep.
this point, which we believe the shipping will scale as the number increases. But then tax on top of that. So what's our tax rate here? Okay. So it's going to be $5, $6 or somewhere in that range, whatever the bad math in my head is. Okay. I think to me, you add tax, you say it's $59 and then it's $6 tax on top of it. We don't deal with shipping, adding shipping into that. Absolutely. unless they're not in town center and they get a little bit. Yeah, so that's my opinion. And is there any other discussion? Otherwise, I'm glad to make a proposal, but if there's other discussion, I'll wait.
Is there a St. Louis County and Missouri tax you have to pay on that too, or? Yeah, but anything you buy, you're paying that. If I go to somewhere and buy something, I don't know what tax is until here you go.
So you look at the receipt, and you know it's higher here than it is in a lot of other places.
I think we also have to think about at Celebrate Wildwood, how much do we want to handle change with each sale?
Well, if I may, that was going to be my comment, is anything ordered online, I think it makes sense to, just charge them taxes on top of the listing price, but maybe, for those who might spontaneously buy it at Celebrate Wildwood, maybe we want to even it out to an even number so that we aren't doing that.
We set up credit, accept credit cards, correct?
Yeah.
And discourage, yeah, I know you go to the Muni or you go to the Fox, you can't pay cash.
Well, I mean, to be honest, from a financial perspective, you want to encourage the cash, because if you get, just make it, if you're going to make it easy, you just make it $60 with tax. You're cutting a little bit off in terms of your profit or your revenue off of the author price and shipping. But if you sell it with a credit card, I don't know what the rates are that you guys are getting. The city gets with whatever processor you've got, but you're paying at least 3 to 4%
Right.
on top. So it's not $60 anymore. It's, can't do the math. It's 56 or whatever the math works out to be. It's 57 because of your credit card processing costs. Now that being said, then you've got a cash box with however many books you sell.
It's so much simpler.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, I guess that's the point of my question. It's like, I've done enough events where we've had to deal with cash and try to make change, prepare the cash box so we think we have the right amount of 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s change. And if we could just, I think, round it up to a reasonable number to capture the tax, then it's much easier on everybody. And we're asking volunteers to sell them.
Right.
And I think that's only fair to them.
And if I may, I noticed during the 50-50 raffle at our last event, everybody has 20s. Nobody has 5s. Nobody has 10s. Everybody has 20s.
They've been to the ATM.
I'm just saying,
Right.
if we did 40 and 60, we would probably be fine.
And then you do that, say you could still advertise the discounted price of, $53.99, and with tax, it's an even 60. Like you can say, hey, we're doing the normal rate's $59. Go to Amazon, it's $59 plus tax. Today, it's a special of whatever the math is to make it a flat 60. If you're paying, you could do cash or credit card at that point, just to make it easy.
And if they went to Amazon, they'd have to do the shipping as well.
Yes.
Well, or they might be a Prime member. But if they go to Amazon, they're not putting $10 or $15 towards preservation activities in Wildwood.
Autograph copy from the primary author.
So
Exactly.
what I'd like to propose at this point is I propose that we move forward with the recommended pricing
Okay.
under the direction that for the Celebrate Wildwood event, we are flexible in terms of what the recommended pricing is when we factor in tax and trying to ease the transactions and the handling of the money during that process. So I'll just say it, recommended pricing within reason too, right? Like if we come back and someone, well, yeah, let's just say that. Sorry, that's my proposal.
Rob?
Yeah, I really want to add the notion that we should probably try to strongly prefer local sales over Amazon just because of the additional pricing and just because it's cleaner and it kind of feels more hometown-y and local. So I would like to suggest that as well.
Okay, anything else?
Madam
So
Chair,
it's yes, Joe.
to Commissioner Hammond, would you mind amending your motion just to say that the paperback would be not greater than $40 and the hardback not greater than $60? That'll cover the tax.
Absolutely. Yeah. With the amending the motion to set a max of 40 for paperback and max of 60 for hardcover. I would actually had one additional thought. I apologize. I'm throwing it at the end. I think if it makes sense to offer up discounted copies to the historic, Wildwood History. Sorry, I can't think of their name.
Historical
Society. Or potentially even other organizations. And maybe that comes in the future. Maybe it's not part of the initial thing, but that I think it makes sense that we should offer those up. That understanding that they're going to try to sell them at retail or close to retail. Sorry.
Okay. So that's your motion. Is there a second? Yes. Do we have a second? Tracy? Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, anyone opposed? It has passed.
Thank you. One other issue I would just like to address, if I may, we did briefly discuss the donated copies. And I just want to make sure that we have direction on that as well. Right now, it is being recommended by the book launch planning committee members that a certain number of copies do be donated. And part of it's for PR purposes, because if we donate it to schools, if we donate it to libraries, if we donate it to historical societies, the History Museum, we're getting our book out there because, they'll be more inclined to promote it themselves and, kind of help spread the word. It's good public relations and, it might set up future sales of the book as well. Like if we're giving it one copy to the school library, well, what if, a fourth grade classroom studying local history wants a whole set? So they might come back at that point and purchase a significant number from us. So, it does make sense. And I think from the Wildwood Historical Society's experience in doing, books of their own, I think it's generally a recommended practice for this type of local history book.
Yes.
I was expressing my personal opinion that I'm more than happy to pay for the book, and I think most council members would. I wouldn't be. The more we can give to schools and libraries, the happier I am.
Okay, let's clarify that, because that would be an upfront gift, because you mentioned, giving away copies after we've sold them.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And
sure.
for PR and public relations, we would want to do those donated copies in advance. So thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Okay. All right. Thank you. Then this discussion is now closed, and thank you.
I don't see anything on the agenda for the children's book about the book.
I did not. I think right now that's kind of an idea that's floating out there, and I'm not as involved in it as our assistant director, Melanie Ripito, who suggested it. But yes, I will give that update too, just as for your information. It has been suggested that we create a children's book version of our Wildwood history book to display periodically in our storybook walk at Community Park, which would then, end with some promotion of, where you can go to purchase your copy of the Wildwood history book. But Ms. Von Gruben is very enthusiastic and has already developed an outline for said children's book. And our assistant director has offered to do illustrations. So it's just going to be kind of a side fun project, I think, for a while. But sure, we would love to hear your input as to this idea as well. I think we just wanted to get a little further along before presenting it to you.
Anyone have any comments or questions about that? I think it sounds like a marvelous idea. It's a good PR to go out and buy the complete book.
All right. Any other discussion on that topic?
Turn too many pages here. Excuse me. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the Medicine Valley Memorial Plaque.
Okay. Okay, Madam Chair and members of this commission. At our last meeting, this commission chose to go in the direction of a Babbler State Park location for the historic marker. And at this point, I don't have any additional updates except that we are currently coordinating with the park staff to determine all the documents, agreements, and et cetera that's necessary. They're also reviewing some of the amended language. I've also sent them a list that we'll be discussing regarding a full list of the United States colored troops enlistees. So that's where we're at with that. However, for your review this evening, I do have updated draft verbiage of the marker. And I do have some updates in that this verbiage has been distributed to a variety of agencies and individuals, including the descendants of Elijah Madison, who have reviewed it and responded very favorably to how we're approaching it. This draft verbiage does not include the full list of enlistees yet. The department is recommending that, given that this full list is 15 names, that we go ahead and pursue the concept of having a two-sided marker and including that map that was suggested by commissioners as well at our last meeting, but having that full set of names along with a QR code just in case we discovered any additional individuals later on. So that is our recommendation pertaining to the marker content. And I do have a presenter here this evening for you. We have Ellen Reichert. She is a member of the Wildwood Historical Society, and she's also a Foster Park volunteer and has done a lot of research for them. And she is here this evening to talk about her research project, which is helping us with the historic marker project. So at this time, I will turn it over to her.
You, Robin. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Ellen Reichert, and I am a member of the Wildwood Historical Society, even though I don't live in Wildwood. I live in Ellisville, but I love this area very, very much, and I do kind of like avocation of both archaeology and history. So the way that I got into all of this. So hang on, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So let's see. Just the arrows. Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's when you start flipping over rocks, and I'm sure you know this as well, when you start flipping over rocks around history, you uncover more things, and then it takes you down different kind of rabbit holes, so to speak. Okay. Oh, would be why. Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to kind of talk about how, what we're going to cover here tonight, and then I'm going to explain to you how I got into this and what I found. So basically, I'm going to run through how it all began, some important facts. So there are some important facts to understand because as I was doing this research, there were conflicting things being said that were not true. They were people's best guesses. And some of it you can say, yes, clearly it happened this way. And some of it you have to say, well, we're not sure. I will explain to you the research methodology that I used in order to find all of the US colored troops that came from the Wildwood area. So I included both Merrimack and Bonham townships because there's a little bit of overlap and it's hard for me to differentiate when looking at those records. And then I'll share with you the 15 that I found. So how it all began. So I've been following the story about Old Slave Road and changing that to Madison Valley. I've been following it for some time and just very interested in it. There's an couple archaeological sites out in that area. So of course I've read all the papers on that. So I'm aware that there's a slave cemetery. I'm aware of the work that was done on the Green property. And so I kind of just started getting interested. Then I went on an archaeological dig at James Madison's Montpelier. And I learned a lot about that. And I came back and I was like, wait a minute. Elijah Madison, James Madison, who owned Elijah. So I find out that the Colemans and the Tylers lived in the same vicinity as James Madison's relatives. So, and he goes back about 4 generations. So his great was received a land grant, and that is where Montpelier is today. So it just started wheel spinning. Meanwhile, I'm a volunteer at Faust, and I help with historical research there. And we were moving the African Schoolhouse number 4 into position this year. And as you know, it's all been dedicated and it's beautiful. But we started looking into the people that attended that school, and we're trying to find out who owned the land, and we're doing all this research, and I start seeing names pop up, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. All these people are intertwined. So Westland Acres and African Schoolhouse number 4 and Elijah Madison, all these people intersect. They were just like the plantation owners, farmers that lived out here, they intermarried. So there's all the stories are woven together. So I started getting really curious. Were there roots about Elijah that connected him to Virginia? And if so, was he somehow related to James Madison's family? And so I've been able to go back 2 generations from Elijah. So his parents, his grandparents, both going back to Virginia. And, then started making connections between the enslaved families. So they're all, as I said earlier, they're all intertwined. And then I started thinking, well, who else enlisted? Right? And how did that exactly happen? And I read some conflicting things. Some said, oh, Elijah escaped and he got away and he joined the army. No. That didn't happen that way. And I'll tell you why in a minute. And then how are these people related to those that we are seeing in the African Schoolhouse? So all of it kind of has been coming together. So one of the projects I've been working on this summer, one of 2 of them is tracing the land for the African Schoolhouse, which I've been working on pretty heavily. And then the second piece was kind of my own little pet project about, hey, let's find out how these people actually got into the army. And, oh, by the way, while I'm at it, why don't I try and find out who else was there? So that's how that started. Long story to get you there, but that's what happens in the brain of someone who just has to keep turning over rocks. So a little bit of important facts to kind of set the context here. Emancipation Proclamation was signed on January 1st, 1863, by Abraham Lincoln. It only freed the slaves that were enslaved states. Missouri was not viewed as a slave state. It was a union state that allowed slavery. So we were a border state. And so the slaves in Missouri were not set free when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. General Order 143, which came about May 22nd, 1863, was the establishment of the U.S. colored troops. Now, they had already been planning and developing what they were going to do. And you may know Fremont had kind of jumped the gun, and Abraham Lincoln kind of slapped his hand and said, no, we're not doing that yet. So General Order 143 kind of set those wheels in motion and got the U.S. colored troops established. And then it was basically each state had to authorize it. So each state had to authorize recruitment of enslaved within their state. So General Order 135 is what set things in motion here in Missouri. So this order authorized the provost marshals, who really kind of were running things during the war, to recruit slaves and free Blacks, and then to compensate, and I say loyal, slave owners up to $300 for each slave they allowed to enlist. When you look at the records of the enlisted, they give a lot of detail. It's hard work because it's kind of, you got to triangulate things, but they list the person who is enlisting. They give a description of that person. So you have their age, their complexion, do they have black eyes, black hair? Are they mulatto? Are they black? Sometimes they'll say yellow. So all of that is in their height. Then it says, who they were recruited by, who was going to be their, commander, who they were examined by, because they were actually all examined to see for fitness of war. And it says claimed to be owned by, and then it would list the person that owned them. And it would also say what county they were from. So the process by which that I did all this. Oh, and just a note. So the loyalty oaths were a big thing, especially out here. There are a lot of people that were asked to sign loyalty oaths. So our little world of Wildwood is kind of like a microcosm of what was happening in the bigger scheme in Missouri, because there were so many people, both Southern sympathizers and people that were wanting the United States, right? Really for the Union cause. So they were living right next to each other, and there was a lot of craziness going on. So they were asked to sign a loyalty oath in order to turn over their slaves and get paid for it, get compensated. So my methodology, it kind of took in a few things, and I will pause for a moment to give credit to Karen Fox and to Jill Von Gruben and to Joyce Mercer, who all have done tremendous work, and I used all of their work in trying to come up with a way to make this all come together. Karen had done tremendous amount of work around Elijah. And so I read all of that information, took all that information in, and kind of started building out genealogy on that. And then Jill had already done some work in the book, the Wildwood history book, where she listed some of the people that were, fought in the war, and the fact that Elijah was there, and he became a corporal, and that's why he has some higher importance perhaps than some of the other people. And then from Joyce. Joyce has some records from Antioch Baptist Church, which go back to the Mount Pleasant days. And so there were actually slaves listed who had been baptized. And that gave me another point of reference to be able to kind of put these people together. So I started with the census and slave schedules of 1860 for Merrimack and Bonham Township. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with those records, but they're all handwritten. And so these were census records that were done. Everyone at that time in the 1850 and the 1860 census had to account for their slave property, just like they did their farms, right? So they had to tell how much they were growing and provide the agricultural information. So they would list the slave, but not by name. So they would have a list that would say, like 1 black male, age, and that's how they would list them. If there were 2 of the same age, they'd be listed 2. Like they're not even separate people. So anyway, that's the way it was listed. The only people listed by name were people that were over 100. And I found 2 of them when I went through the list, which was really interesting. So that was what I used to be able to look at who were the enslavers, who were the owners. And I created a list that I could search because it's really hard to search handwriting. Then I took the enlistment records. So Family Search does provide those they're free. You can get on their Family Search and look them up. But I looked at all the enlistment records for the state of Missouri. And first I had to look at county. So I looked at all the St. Louis and was keeping track of all that, and then had to start narrowing that down because it doesn't provide township. And so it was a matter of kind of looking at all the different pieces, like, does that name show up in the census or not? And is the slave's name familiar or not? Because you start getting a sense of who those people are because you're in it all the time. So they list on that enlistment record all that information, and the owner's name and the owner's county was really how I started to narrow it down, and then went from there. And of course, Benton Barracks was the place that these people went, so that helped as well. So any questions so far on like how I did this? I know I just threw a ton of information at you. Okay. And I've got an eye doctor appointment next month, so I should be good. So what did I find in going through all of this? So I found 15 people that I know for sure were from this area. So there's a few that are in Bonham. And so where they are in Bonham, whether it's Chesterfield or Wildwood, I can't tell you. I mean, I'd have to, well, I guess I could look at maps and kind of try to narrow it down and compare it to today. But for the sake of this, I just went ahead and just included them all. There were 2 people that I did not find on those lists who Jill had found, or Karen had found, when they were working on the original book. And they have them as substitutes. They were paid substitutes. And those 2 people would have been by their owner. Basically, the owner paid the army to take them, and in place of themselves going and fighting for the Union. And so I didn't find that in the enlistment records because it must be a different kind of record, and I haven't identified what that is yet. So I'm going to take it on faith, and know that Jill, how meticulous Jill and Karen both are, that, you know, they have that documentation. They know that those were substitutes. But I think one of the most interesting things, and this I noticed when I was reading the book, there were multiple people who signed up on the same day. There were 8 that signed up on March 17th, 1864. So we put this in context. It wasn't until the fall of 1863 that Missouri basically said, yes, you know, under the general order, you know, now you can send enslaved people to be part of the army. And when you think about that in time, right, things were moving pretty quickly. I mean, given that there wasn't a lot of communication and technically these people were not allowed to read or write, they had to hear a lot of this, right? And so, and the people that all came together, they're all interrelated and they're all pretty much within the same plantations as well. So primarily owned by the Colemans and the Tylers. And you see a lot of brothers, you see fathers and sons, and, you know, that are joining up. So when they joined the army, they joined the Union forces, they were essentially trading slavery in order to fight for freedom and potentially die during that fight. And a lot of them did die, and a lot of them died of disease. So the barracks, they died much more so than their white counterparts from disease. And they fought valiantly, those that were there. So, you know, Elijah's story, and, you know, they fought very valiantly throughout. So if we think about this, you know, kind of what are the remaining questions? So substitutes, they're not listed in the enlistment records. So there's got to be another method to find them. All the records are handwritten, and they have been transcribed, but not well, because they're hard to read. So it's really difficult to search. And the other component here, and this is the question mark for me, is did we capture everyone? And so, you know, in talking to Robin, I said, you know, one of the things we need to do is we need to go back to the descendants, and we need to say, this is the list that we were able to research and find. Is there anyone else that you know of that, you know, was in the Civil War? Because they passed that history down in their families. And it could be we missed somebody. And I say that because they often leased out their enslaved people to work for other people. So if there could have been a mistake in the record, right? Somebody that was really enslaved and owned by someone here in Wildwood could have enlisted when they were in Saline County or, you know, out in Boone County working for somebody else. So they were like on loan, so to speak. And that's possible. Just given that it's a handwritten or, you know, kind of process. And, you know, it is possible too, because it is all handwritten. So I did find a page in the census that said that it was Merrimack and it was really Bonham. And I knew it only because it didn't match like up to the page before it, but it matched up to the other. So, but I think it's safe to say that, you know, we have more than we thought we had before. And so I think that's huge. And as we've talked about before, as I've talked about with Robin, you know, the ability to be able to do a QR code, and I get not everybody understands QR codes, but knowing that you can go to a website, and if something changes, we find out more, we can add it there so that we don't erase somebody's history by accident. Robin knows I'm pretty passionate about this topic. Because, when I first saw the plaque and what was going to be on it, I'm like, no, there's more than that. And so, we don't want someone to feel like they were overlooked if we're going to go to the level of putting a plaque out there to honor them. So anyway, you have a list. I think I sent a list. So you have all of the information there. This is what I know, it's far away, but it looks like this when you're actually going through it. I mean, it's like really, it's microfilm that's been, or it's paper that's been microfilmed, and then you can't it's a challenge, but it's a labor of love where I'm concerned. So anyway, you have this list and it has all the people that we found, and then you see who their owners were. And in the article that Karen had written some time ago about Elijah Madison, she actually pulled all the documents off of the National Archives that show, his enlistment and, his promotion to corporal and when he was mustered out. So, the picture that's at the Missouri Historical Society library. So all of that information does exist, and we can get it on these other people. And there's also the letter that came from the Coleman family to the government requesting their $300 and with an affidavit that says, yeah, he did give this person to fight. So questions?
Chris?
Thank you. That was amazing. To learn about the process and as much research as you've done into this it's amazing. It boggles my mind, and it makes me go, wow, that's cool. I want to try to do that. But
Thanks.
But then I start thinking from a technology background of all the ways to try to digitize and use AI to try to do all that, like link all this thing. So anyways, I think it's very cool. I appreciate your efforts there.
Yeah. Thank you.
I would just on the topic of QR code, because it was mentioned, I'm a technology guy. That's what I do. It's what I love. I'm opposed to QR codes, but I think if we can do it in a way that it's not part of like a permanent part of the plaque, but it's to me, the plaques are official and formal, and a QR code to me, this is just my paranoia, 15 years from now isn't as useful.
Maybe obsolete.
Yeah. So, but if we can attach it in some way to the pole, or like there's some other form of display that if in the future it is obsolete, it can be removed without damaging or taken away from the overall presentation. I think there's that to me, I think makes more sense than embedding a QR code into whatever they're made out of, copper or iron or whatever they're made out of. So that's my initial thought on QR code. But again, that's awesome. Thank you very much. This is like to hear how you go through this process is very intriguing.
As I said earlier, it is like turning over rocks, and as we are, I got carried away on all of this stuff some time ago when I discovered Westland Acres too. I mean, I kind of fell. I tend to drive around and find things. I kind of like that. And so I found Westland Acres, and then I was like, I had to read everything I could about Westland Acres. And, so, but all these things are interrelated. And so, I don't know how many of you know about the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. I mean, here's this cemetery, and Elijah is buried there, and 2 other veterans from the U.S. Colored Troops. And like you drive right by it when you drive down Wild Horse Creek Road. I mean, I finally found the steps. But I can't, you're not going to go back in there this time of year. Everything's overgrown and full of ticks, but yeah, I'm happy to help with whatever I can help with. And I'm happy to share whatever kind of research I find, because I'm doing a ton of it right now, and it's all based on the African American kind of experience in Chesterfield and Wildwood. And because it started around the schoolhouse primarily, and then my own interest in some of the other things going on. So I'm happy to help. I'm happy to do more research for you if you need it. And I do this for fun. This is not a paid gig. I do it completely for fun. So
That's what's known as being a true volunteer.
I am a true volunteer. Yes, I am. And last year, so the year before, I did research all the archaeological sites at Faust Park, which there are 4 on the park property and 1 across the street, which used to be part of the property, and just uncovered so many great things. I mean, just amazing. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, we thank you. Thank you so much.
Ellen, the Department of Planning also thanks you very much. This was just such an interesting history, just everything you did, like explaining how you went about this research project. I'm going to reach out to our certified local government coordinator and see if we can count it as a training. But yes, I just think it's wonderful information to have as we go into our public information meeting, as we talk to people about this historic marker and why we're why this project came about and what we're doing with it. So hopefully you got as much as I did from that presentation. I think you did. Okay, so with that said, now I am asking for a motion from you to move forward on the recommendation the department is putting forth in terms of this. I would say it's not a final draft verbiage for the marker, because we need to now incorporate those names. But listing the full 15 names, having a 2-sided marker with a map, and then identifying an appropriate way to incorporate a QR code, given some of the concerns that have been stated at this meeting in terms of finding something that we could potentially temporarily have there, but that looks good and coordinated with the marker. And I'll be working within graphics on that. The second draft verbiage, knowing that it's going to be altered somewhat to incorporate those names. 2-sided plaque with map, if that's what you want to do.
I think that's important. Embedded in the plaque.
Okay, yes, I would request a more positive, we'd like to explore options for incorporating a QR code that's not permanently affixed to the marker. Thank you.
Is there a second to that motion? Rob? Okay, any other comments or questions about this? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and anyone opposed? It has passed. It will be 2-sided.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Angie Bertlow, and I live at Strecker and Valley Road, and Jan's family had a farm there years ago. But I'm so excited. I just happened to come tonight, and I've been looking all over for the cemetery. I've been in the cemetery looking for their graves. And Elijah Madison's brother, Stapleton Madison, lived on our farm. And my husband just found the old foundation of their house.
Angie, I was going to be mentioning that.
Yeah, like, so cool. I'm so excited to hear this. I just happened to come. But I really want to do something with the farm. There's like 60 deer in the field every night eating my husband's crops. So we're trying to figure out, that's what I was gonna talk to him, a whole nother subject about. But I love the history there. And I know you're talking about plaques. I would love to do something on the farm with this story too. So just throwing that out there. But thank you.
Thanks, Angie.
If I may, there is a second component to this discussion, and that is moving forward with a public information meeting at Babbler State Park, which is our preferred. We're still coordinating with state park personnel, as you know, with institutions. There is a process to getting things approved. So I'm targeting for a mid-August public information date. But it'll kind of depend on how soon I can get word back from them on what will work. However, what I'm asking for you to do this evening is review the list I put together for contacting the contact list for the public information meeting. Obviously, we'll be inviting our important entities and people from the city, but also area residents within 3,000 feet of Madison Valley and the historic marker location. The Westland Acres Community, Union Baptist Church, Chesterfield Historic Preservation Committee, the descendants of the named individuals and listees as we can find them, Babbler State Park representatives who will most likely help us host that meeting, Wildwood Historical Society, the St. Louis County Historian, and any individuals who have made comment to the city on this matter to date that I can identify. Am I leaving anyone off this list is what I'm asking you this evening. And if you don't have anyone immediately, but would like to reach out to me over next week, you have my email, and we're not going to be contacting these individuals immediately. I have to wait for the state park to get back to me. So we do probably have another week to refine this list and make sure we have everyone included.
Well, as usual, you have a very complete list to our thinking at this point, and we thank you for all the work that you do.
Great, thank you.
So we don't need any motions on that at this time?
Do I need a motion?
Madam Chair, I believe if there's an objection to us moving forward in August with the public meeting, then yes, yeah, we need to know that. Otherwise, we're going to proceed forward.
Okay, so then we're looking for a motion to have this public meeting.
No, he's looking for a motion to object to the public meeting if we so choose. Is that correct?
No, we'll always do
Other
the
way
motion
around?
in
I'm
the
sorry.
affirmative. So if there's objection to us, we don't need a motion. We just want to know if August, we believe we'll be ready in August, and we'd like to get it because we're still working under the time frame of December 2023 to have the process complete.
Jim?
I will absolutely list the Rockwood School District on here, and I have contacts. I have the social studies coordinator on speed dial, so I will reach out to him.
One more question might be for Ms. Reichert. Is there anyone outside of the Chesterfield Historic Preservation Commission that interacts with the African American Schoolhouse number 4, like that might make sense to include, or would they be under that umbrella?
That'd be wonderful. All right, again, we have another week, I think, to play with, so please just email me if something comes to you over this next week. And we'll just make sure we have a complete list as we go into our public information meeting in August, because I don't hear an objection. A revised schedule is included in your packet this evening. Basically, it just shows you where we are and kind of where we're headed, given our current timeframe and timeline. Thank you.
And just for the commissioner's information, Chesterfield no longer has a historic preservation commission. They have been downgraded to a committee. Found that very interesting, but Robin had it correctly on the list, and it's, I think, not real general knowledge, but they're really interested in how we will work and how we get the things that we do. So moving on to Celebrate Wildwood.
I believe there's another item before Celebrate Wildwood, Madam
Westland
Chair.
Acres.
Westland Acres, I'm sorry. I have things in the wrong order in my notebook. Thank you. Hey, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, very briefly, the authorized letter that was presented to the commission at its last meeting was delivered to Pastor Fields, and we are awaiting a response. And as soon as we get something from Mr. Pastor Fields, we'll let you know. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we can move on to Celebrate Wildwood.
Yes, we can. All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, as you are aware, we are jumping on the planning for Celebrate Wildwood this year, given our book launch. And the fact that we are, the commission is looking to participate in the parade. So Mr. Rubus, where are you going? Okay, well, we'll start with the items that you have already approved at the last meeting. I will say that your chair reached out to me and suggested we also include some photos from the student Route 66 Task Force recognition ceremony as part of the display. So I concur, and if there's no objections, we'll add that to the list. But otherwise, really, I think at this point, we're full into parade planning. And I've listed a description in your packets this evening of what that parade float might look like. I've since had a conversation with Commissioner Rubus, and he has some alterations, I think, in the vision just to simplify it a little bit more. So I'll just turn it over to him to present those revisions.
Hey, Jim.
We were originally blown up. Both sides would be the public. And then orient that on a float and have the people on the float with copies of the book that they are showing to the people. We also want to give away some hand cards to the people that are along the side with that QR code up. And then a banner on the side of the float.
Jim, do you have your mic on? There you go.
A banner on the side of the float indicating the Celebrate Wildwood, the history book. And after Dan and I start talking back and forth, I think somebody from the Wildwood Historical Society said when I was gonna put it on like Celotex or something like that, they said, oh no, you got to use plywood. Well, the parade is from schnooks to town hall. So I don't really think we need that. So we're gonna put it on foam core. Now, the size of the book will be based upon how large we can get foam board on. And it will be in proportion. So if we could get 4 feet wide, it would be a little over 5 feet high. So, and the thought is that after the parade, we bring that to the tent where the Historical Society and we're located, just so that people, that's another thing. And also, if we could reuse the banner in that same method, we can compensate, have less expense and it would be something that we could assemble early that morning. We wouldn't have to, have a big deal on it. So that's basically what we've come up with. Is there anybody that has anything that they might want to add to that?
Chris?
Is there a vehicle and a trailer already acquired for this, or how's that like?
Well, yeah.
Commissioner Hammonds, we're working on that.
Otherwise,
don't-
we'll be walking down the street with a sandwich.
We get a 12 sandwich boards made up. We could all be books.
We're working on the logistics of bringing this vision to life. I've already reached out to our graphic designer first, and then I'll be contacting printing companies about how big we can go with the book. So I'll let you know once I have that information back. But I'm sure we can figure something out.
The whole thing is to bring awareness and in past that street in Manchester is generally pretty packed and people are putting out chairs and everything. Last year, some the night before, so they could stake their claim,
That's great.
other spots.
Would we also be passing out candy? You got to pass out candy. That or I'm going to throw books at kids.
Well, I'm telling you, personally, this is my opinion. Passing out candy, I think, is dangerous. Because kids, they see that candy, and if there's some in the street, they'll run for it.
Yep, they do.
And Webster Groves had a parade
Just thinking that.
about 12, 15 years ago, and
Little girl was
young
killed.
girl was killed in the parade for doing exactly. And you got to be careful, you just can't give kids
Right.
candy anymore.
The Wildwood Celebration Commission has a list of requirements that they've adopted for parade participants. The float from the commission will be held to those requirements, just like anyone else.
If I may, because we're talking about a parade for the Wildwood History Book, I just remembered that in discussing book pricing and children's books and everything else, I forgot to say that we do have a hardcover proof of the Wildwood History Book over at that table there. So if you missed that fact when you came in, you should definitely go look at it. It's beautiful. It's got the premium color pages inside of it, and it's a really nice looking book. So please do go look at it. Anyway, back to parade planning.
Any questions on things for Jim?
I think one action item I did have related to the parade is who is going to participate. They're taken.
Yeah, they're taking.
I'll write on it.
All right, our chair has volunteered.
See Dan and Mandy.
Okay, that's 3 of you.
I will if I'm available. Unfortunately, I can't commit just yet, but I'm pushing on my family to make a decision on that weekend. So it's hard to make my family plan something
Yeah, no, I'm
2
sure.
months out, but I'm
We
trying.
can always recruit some.
I think we could recruit Mr. Bockert maybe.
think so.
He is an officer after all.
Who will be driving the vehicle? Is that Joe that you were looking at?
Actually, I'm probably going to contact Tom Kelp.
Oh,
If he
okay.
would provide something for the benefit of the parade. And obviously I'll ask if he can have a
Okay,
driver.
Great.
Doesn't have to be that way.
I say, I need to talk with Mr. Roughton and you to get some better specifications and things you think you need. I'm kind of in a bit of a fog right now. Your description, I'm sure, was fine. I'm just not. So we need to talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on the Celebrate Wildwood? I had one thought. Do we have pictures of the buildings in Wildwood that are on the National Historic Registry or on the Wildwood one? Can we have a display of that to show these are some of the historic things that are right here in Wildwood?
I believe one of or two of
Yeah.
our display banners are
Okay.
related to our registered properties. So yes, we'll have that on
Good,
display.
good.
Though I will say, keep in mind just how busy our tent is getting every year. So we'll try to get everything there. And we'll prioritize obviously our more current projects where we want to really get everyone excited, but I think so far everything's doable, so we'll work to achieve it.
Excuse me, I'm making a note for myself here. So then we are ready to go on to the point of interest map. And it's new and it's gorgeous back there, and hope everybody took a look at it. Robin?
That's really my update for you this evening. I've already told you what we were going to change. I think the only thing I added to it was the QR code for the Route 66 virtual tour. So that I don't have to do the inserts anymore. But yes, you can take a look at the proof back there. It's final, so please don't find any errors. I'm not going to fix them at this point. But it was for your information, just so you get a sneak preview of what's going to be coming out by Celebrate Wildwood.
Work program.
All right. I don't believe I have any additional updates for you regarding the work program. Every member of this commission should have received my update email regarding the Essen Log Cabin project and what we're looking at in terms of a newer timeline. We're still proceeding as planned, with pattern Ives in the drawings. It's just the reconstruction of the cabin itself probably won't take place until 2024, given where we're at. But I'm still working with many family members. I know there's a lot of interest in even raising funds or, creating, making donations, interpreting the history. So I think there's a lot to do between now and then. And, we certainly got a lot to do as far as even just the initial groundwork. So.
Any questions? In the past, we've had a donation container at Celebrate Wildwood for Essen Log Cabin reconstruction. Are we going to do that again, or are we just going to center on the money for the book?
I think that should be the focus. Essen Log Cabin in the past really hasn't raised that
Not
much.
Right.
And since we'll be doing book sales and have the cash box there, it just let's
Okay,
leave
good.
well enough alone if
Okay,
that's all
good.
right.
Thank you. Okay. New business, upcoming training opportunities, Robin.
All right. Well, as you may have noticed, I've been pushing training rather hard this year. I think I felt a little bad because my first year on the Historic Preservation Commission, we kept finding ourselves up into the wire, and I'm trying to get everyone to get training in the last couple months. And this year I've been proactive. But as you may know, as part of being a certified local government with our state historic preservation office, our commissioners are required to attend one annual training per year that's approved by SHPO. And our CLG coordinator does have the ability to approve trainings. So I will be circling back to him about the training from this evening, because I do believe it was certainly educational for this commission. However, I did want to bring to your attention that there are many opportunities for this training. We can attend conferences as a commission. There's the Missouri Preservation Conference. It's a statewide conference. There's also the CLG Forum that's hosted by the State Historic Preservation Office. We've been very involved this year in the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, and they're already advertising their conference for next year at West Palm Beach in Florida. It's a 5-day conference, it looks like. And as you know, they have very, very educational sessions. And what I love about the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, and I don't know, maybe it was through APA, but they've been doing a great job these days of bringing historic preservation together with planning, which I think is very much what this commission is about, because we're using historic preservation to create a sense of place in Wildwood. So anyway, I just can't say enough about what I've seen this year in terms of those trainings. And then of course there's the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And you might be wondering why I'm bringing up all these trainings is because actually that is an approved item for our next item. I'll be talking about the Historic Preservation Fund and those grant opportunities through our State Historic Preservation Office, of which we can apply for multiple grants, and trainings for commission members and staff are covered by those by that grant money. So if we wanted to attend a conference as a commission, that would help us do that. It wouldn't just be a cost right out of the Department of Planning's budget if we applied and was granted that. So that's why I'm bringing this up. But for your convenience, we also have a lot of virtual trainings now available to us, and the pandemic kind of brought that opportunity. I've been pushing a lot of those virtual trainings. A lot of them are available on demand, so you don't even have to be available during that time. You can watch it later, and guess what? It counts. So if you haven't done your training this year, please consider just going back and watching the recording of some of the past trainings and just getting that done. As long as the training itself occurred during that reporting period, it counts. The training itself, like whenever it happened, had to have happened during that reporting year.
Refreshes again off the dates on the that it counts.
So it counts from October 1st, 2022 to the end of September 2023. So you have until the end of September. If you haven't yet done your training, you have until the end of September. And if I haven't reached out to you and nagged you about your training, then it means you've done it and you're good to go. And your chair is good to go times 100 maybe. But she even signed up for the short course, which of course is another training that's listed on here. The National Alliance of Preservation Commission is offering a 2-day training. And the topics are just so pertinent to what we're doing here as a commission. The topics are covering preservation trades, contractors, cultural significance, small scale development, incentives for preservation, demolition by neglect, outreach to property owners, and federal grants that are available to help preservation projects. And as you know, we're looking at potentially a partnership with St. Albans Properties for that JP Connell house. We don't have an update yet, but we're exploring some of those partnerships, and having this knowledge could really help us be a beneficial partner to them in moving forward. So if you're all interested in this short course, keep in mind, it is on demand as well. So even if you aren't available those 2 days, you can still earn your AICP or AIA, I can't say it, AIA credit by watching those on-demand trainings at your leisure after the fact. So please consider, it's only $50. The department can pay for it. There's even, I think, a scholarship if you are really worried about that.
Is there any that you can just go online and there's no charge for?
There's free trainings every month. Right now, they're holding off because they're preparing for the short course. But part of your membership to this organization is ongoing webinar and training opportunities. And there have been several that they have recordings for online.
Yeah, so I could go, but I mean,
Yes, if you're talking about the easiest way to complete your training, then you can go to their website, and as a member, you can watch any of the recordings. You just have to log in.
is that the same? The password or we use that one that we had for that one?
I'll have to revisit it. I think right now I'm just automatically logged in, so I forget how that happens.
When we had, when it was the Monarch Fire Department, we had the
Yeah.
archaeologists come back. Was that in this time frame? And would that count for training when?
Yes, if you were present for the entire duration of the archaeologist training, then yes, you got credit for that, and it's in the minutes.
Do you remember when that was?
That was in October of last year. If I reached out to you, it means that I think in your case, you arrived a half hour late. Sorry.
What if he goes back and watches the recording?
Well, if you go back and watch the recording, then I suppose I can count it.
Get that half hour back. Okay.
The last one that we were watching, I don't know how many, and I can't remember the name of it, but I thought it was one of the better ones that we had a chance to visit. So if you can come up with the name of that one again for anyone who needs to watch something, it was excellent.
Yes, absolutely. I think it was best practices for local preservation commissions or something. And it was very good. So yes, there's lots of opportunities to get your training in for the reporting period. And there's lots to consider as we talk about this next item, which is funding, because we need to plan. I think part of the reason we miss the boat every year on this pool of grant funding we get as a CLG is because we don't plan ahead enough. But if we already have some things identified, I'll just put in, applications for everything we can think of, and we'll just see where it goes. But my understanding is not enough CLGs take advantage of this funding. So we should be able to get some. So if it's training, if it's a preservation plan for Westland Acres, I'm already kind of moving into it. Let's get that application in and get moving on it, because, there's money on the table that I think we're missing.
We're all going for
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I have for training. That's my plug. Those are the opportunities available. And if there's any questions, of course, we're here to answer them. Okay.
Well, it looks like that kind of brings us down to the end of the business for the evening. It says that we have no other matters for consideration. Do you have something?
Madam Chair, actually, I'd like to circle back to our grant opportunity for
Okay.
CLGs, because I touched on it. I didn't
I
actually
thought you were
feel.
just doing the whole thing.
Yes. So as mentioned, we do, as a CLG, receive, there's a dedicated funding pool for us through the state administered historic preservation fund. So there's grant money available to us every year. In recent years, they have awarded approximately, it's not a huge amount, but it's good money. They've awarded approximately $20,000 in grants. Individual awards are generally capped at $50,000, and grants can support up to 60% of a project budget with a 40% match required by the applicant. We qualify, obviously. We just have to remain in good standing. So watch those on-demand trainings. what is funded? And this is this is where we end up pulling out our hair every year because we want to, build our park with it and we want to build the Essen Log Cabin and that's not funded by this money. Training opportunities are funded. Conferences and workshops are funded. The creation of preservation plans are funded. Posters and pamphlets related to historic preservation are funded. We can do surveys for the purposes of National Register nomination. We can do nominations to the National Register of Historic Places. And then we can, create documents for any publicly owned National Register listed buildings. So there's a lot of things that we can do, but we can't fund any kind of construction work. We can't fund private development. We can't fund our Essen Log Cabin, but there are things we can fund. So the department is recommending, or not recommending, we are proposing several ideas for taking advantage of this funding this year. One is a preservation plan for Westland Acres. We haven't quite yet had that conversation with the community. So, I don't want to say, full speed ahead on that, but we might do a pre-application with the State Historic Preservation Office and in anticipation that they might be very interested in that idea. Training conference fees for members and staff. So if you are interested in attending a state conference next year, let's get it on the books and, potentially budget money for it. We've talked about doing a Route 66 tourism brochure, like a standalone brochure. So that's a possibility. Historic preservation as economic development is a big, big priority at the state level right now. It's one of their goals. So if we wanted to do materials and, really make the case for that with our, Route 66 businesses in particular, we could develop a pamphlet. And then finally, we've been talking about interpretive materials related to the Madison Valley Historic Marker. Babbler State Park is a National Register property, so I think they would be considered a priority for any posters, pamphlets, or brochures we wanted to do related to this history at the park to supplement what we have going on with the marker. So those are some ideas we have, and of course we're open to yours. But I do have to apply or pre-apply for this grant by Friday, August 18th. So I need ideas this evening. And I will be attending a training for the grant on August 1st. It's virtual, but it'll just it'll get me ready to apply. Yes.
So I got two items and they're both probably too late, but I'd ask, is there flexibility or an option? So just thinking about kind of pamphlets and brochures or posters, is there any benefit or value in trying to say, hey, can we get another $600 to print out more points of interest maps for next year? Just knowing, granted, we've got a new one. If I recall correctly, we're essentially done with it. We don't have any intention of updating it going forward, but could it be used to order additional supplies for increased numbers for next year? Granted, we're going to give out a lot this year. So that's point number one. And then how far could you stretch that? Could you do the same thing with the book? Could you fund 60% of an inventory where we commit 40% to have additional supplies of the books for next year? Again, misses out on Celebrate Wildwood this year, but if it's $1,500 or $2,000 or whatever, knowing that we're going to probably order some additional books, then maybe that helps to offset some of that author costs of buying books. And I don't know how much detail was trimmed here in terms of what you put in the bolded list, but like, would a book potentially cover it? So
my immediate guess or instinct would be that books would not be covered because they're not free. We're trying to turn a profit. Well, profit, we're going to fund our preservation activities with it, but yeah, I think since we're selling the book, I have a feeling they wouldn't fund it.
What about the storybook walk?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on what we're doing with it. I don't know. I'll reach out and I'll ask, but that's my gut instinct. I think your first idea though is on point. I think if we plan ahead, if we're anticipating more orders of the map. I will say that, with this being the second year of it, I don't know that we're going to need another 2,000 maps next year. It might be something to plan ahead for the next year after that, maybe, or, we'll just see where the stores are. So it's hard to say with the map. But I do think that would be something that could potentially be funded.
What, I know it's just kind of in the incubation stage, but the children's book. Was that something that we were thinking about selling, or was that something that we were thinking about giving to the school district and the schools in the area?
As noted, the reason I didn't even present it this evening is because it's such a fuzzy idea at this point that, I couldn't even tell you, where we see it headed. I don't think our assistant director had any clue that Ms. Von Gruben would be so excited about it. She'd already returned an outline. That is just not where this was. It was kind of like, hey, we should think about doing this down the line. And then, excited people ran with it. So that's where we're at with the children's book. I don't know that we're ready to do a pre-application for it, is I guess my answer to your question at this point. Now, maybe next year, if we're at that stage, I think potentially, if we're not going to sell it.
What's the harm in asking for it? Maybe it helps to move it along if we could get funding. And granted, we don't know what it consists of, right? Is it a color printed book that is given away for free? Is it a coloring book? Is it what, like, there's still a lot of probably planning and thought that needs to go into it, but could we say, hey, we're gonna set aside an amount, if we've got to cover 40 out of 100%, I mean, the potential grant for 60, like, could we say that we're gonna set aside $1,200 or whatever the number is? I don't know, just because they say no, that's okay. Then it doesn't actually cost us $1,200. We don't have to commit anything.
You're convincing me, but Director Vunich has his light on.
It is an idea in a very preliminary stage. And there are a lot of things going on in the department as well. We are not just the Department of Historic Preservation. I think we're more ready maybe to tackle something like the tourism brochure for Route 66, the 100th anniversary is coming up. We also had for a while a Route 66 initiative to try to basically revitalize the corridor. And I think that's an economic development tool. So if I were to ask the commission tonight to endorse something, I'd like to think Route 66 might be that project that we could maybe submit a grant for.
It could bring more attention again to the park project too. We don't want to lose sight of what everything we've accomplished over the last year. Thoughts?
I feel like I've talked a lot tonight, but I'm completely in agreement with that. And I don't think you're asking for a motion at this point, or are you?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Because that would dictate where we spend our time and what we prioritize in terms of this pre-application.
Anyone else have any feedback? I mean, I'm not opposed to asking for the direction of Route 66.
As long as we can give them the latitude. Just that sort of generally you go up, crowd what one of apply. 6 area.
That would be wonderful to have that flexibility. Yes.
Route 66. Or
Yeah.
You made the motion, Tracy, something.
Tracy second?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't understand that. I'm sorry. Okay, any other comments on this? Lots of thoughts. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, anyone opposed? We have it Route 66.
All right. Thank you. I'm actually really excited about that one, as you may know.
Always nice to get some free money if we can. Hey, is there anything else for us this evening? Well, I have a closing thought. I want to thank you for the meeting tonight. I know it's been a little longer. We've had a lot to talk about, but here we are continuing to preserve historic places and things and happenings right here in Wildwood. And that's what we're all about. The knowledge for future people depends on what we do today. Remember our work on past, present, and future for the Missouri State Time Capsule? A lot of thought went into that. Past, present, and future. The future for the people depends on us. Have a good month until we meet in August. It's going to be 5 weeks before our next meeting, which is on August the 24th. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Rob says, let's adjourn this meeting. And Tracy says, I agree. Thank you very, very much. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks for all the efforts. It's really great.